New ownership with the Broncos. They're not afraid to spend money. They spend so much money with Russell Wilson.
Sean Payton won't be tied to what Russell Wilson does as far as his future in Denver. I believe Sean Payton is going to have to coach in a different manner as well with dealing with Russell Wilson as opposed to Drew Brees.
One of the biggest dominoes in this entire NFL offseason has just fallen. And the crazy thing is, the Super Bowl hasn't even been played yet. Hell, the Pro Bowl games haven't even been played yet. So before we get to the content, this is our second upload of the day. So if you want to support our grind, we're on the grind to 700,000 subscribers. Make sure you drop a like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. Now that we get all that out of the way, break! A lot of you guys have been hitting me up in the DMs telling me how much money you've been making on Prize Picks. A huge shout out to my subscriber Spencer Sims, who's made $7,000 off of his picks over the past 2 weeks. If you follow me on Instagram, you know I play Prize Picks religiously and I post my picks to my story each and every day. If you want to try out Prize Picks right now, when you use my promo code Mikerophone, you'll get up to a $100 deposit match on your first deposit. And if you get any big hits on Prize Picks, make sure you DM them to me on Instagram so I could feature you in future promos. And thank you, Prize Picks, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? This past year has been an absolute show for the Denver Broncos. I mean, anything that could have possibly gone wrong, which I don't think any of us were even expecting anything to go wrong during this past year for the Broncos, did go wrong. From Russell Wilson potentially being washed to teammates arguing on the sidelines, Russell Wilson missing wide open reads, and this is coming off of an offseason where we were expecting the Denver Broncos to potentially be a Super Bowl team. I mean, on paper, this team had one of the most ferocious defenses in the entire NFL, and something that was commonly not discussed is the fact that they had a remarkable defense that performed up to their expectations. The sad thing is, despite the defense being able to contain opposing offenses to about 35 touchdowns combined this past season, the Denver Broncos were only able to score 29 of their own. They were barely able to top 16 points per game this year. So with that being said, the Broncos were in some trouble. They gave up a tremendous amount of draft capital for Russell Wilson. That included 2 first-round picks, including the 9th overall pick in this past year's NFL draft that turned into Charles Cross, 2 second-round picks, and a 2022 5th-round selection, on top of Drew Lock, Noah Fant, and Shelby Harris. The sad thing is, not only did the Seattle Seahawks have the best overall draft class from this past year's NFL draft, but the Seattle Seahawks had a significantly better record than the Denver Broncos. So much so that the Seattle Seahawks currently have the 5th overall pick in this year's NFL draft. So this Russell Wilson trade just worked out wonderfully for them. What's even more laughable is the fact that the Denver Broncos signed Russell Wilson to a huge contract extension before the season even began, pretty much becoming tied to him until his age 40 season. And when you're the second highest paid quarterback in the entire NFL and your team has no choice but to commit to you for the foreseeable future, that means you only have one more option left. That is firing the head coach that you originally brought on in Nathaniel Hackett. Now, originally, I thought Nathaniel Hackett was brought in to lure over Aaron Rodgers, and as a matter of fact, those same rumors are starting over again because since Nathaniel Hackett was fired, the New York Jets hired him as their offensive coordinator, and you're already starting to see Aaron Rodgers to the Jets rumors, and we've already covered that in a separate video. But now that Nathaniel Hackett has officially been fired, the question remained about who were the Denver Broncos going to bring in to take his place, and it came down to 2 major head coaches, one being Jim Harbaugh, who consistently flirts with head coaching rumors each and every single offseason, I think in a John Gruden-esque type of way to drive up his value and his price, and the other being Sean Payton, who has already flirted with the Arizona Cardinals, and to be honest, I thought he was going to go to the Arizona Cardinals, but it seems like that's not what's going to happen, because according to Adam Schefter, the New Orleans Saints and the Denver Broncos are finalizing compensation in return for Super Bowl winning head coach Sean Payton, sources tell ESPN. This clears the way for Payton to sign with the Broncos to become the Denver Broncos' next head coach. And so Sean Payton is expected to head to Denver as its next head coach. So later on, Ian Rappaport would come in and say that the Denver Broncos will send a first-round pick in 2023 and an early pick the year after, and the deal has already been agreed to. The official compensation comes to us from Adam Schefter, saying that Denver's 2023 first-round pick and next year's second-round pick for Sean Payton and the New Orleans Saints 2024 third-round pick. Before we jump into analysis, I'd also like to let you know that this was a huge domino that fell, because immediately after this trade was announced, DeMeco Ryans, the former 49ers defensive coordinator, has reached a 6-year agreement with the Houston Texans, which means for the Houston Texans, there's no more revolving door at the head coach position. They get a former player of theirs that is going to be the face of the franchise for the foreseeable future, or at least for the next 6 years, assuming he doesn't get fired prematurely. But for the most part, this is more of a commitment than the organization made to Lovie Smith or David Culley. So currently, the Carolina Panthers hired Frank Reich, the Denver Broncos hired Sean Payton, and the Houston Texans hired DeMeco Ryans, which means the Indianapolis Colts and the Arizona Cardinals currently have openings available. So with that being said, let's jump into this analysis of Sean Payton to the Denver Broncos. The Broncos essentially had their hands tied behind their back. They didn't really have much of a choice given the situation that they put themselves in. You already invested a significant amount of assets in bringing in Russell Wilson to begin with, and you already signed the man to a huge contract extension. He is the second highest paid quarterback in the entire NFL. There's no way you could get out of that contract. The opportunity to punt on Russell Wilson as if you would punt on Matt Ryan and the Indianapolis Colts doesn't exist. You have no choice but to move forward with him. With that being said, the only option you had was pursuing a flashy, highly revered head coach such as Sean Payton to potentially build an offense around Russell Wilson. And Sean Payton seemed very enthusiastic about the prospect of working with Russell Wilson, and Russell Wilson's also been very enthusiastic about working with Sean Payton. As a matter of fact, in the beginning of January, you even had Sean Payton saying how he would fix Russell Wilson after a horrific year with Denver where he threw 13 touchdown passes against 10 interceptions. And this is what he had to say: "You correct flaws immediately, and then we don't worry about how long the process is going to take." In other words, I'd want to cut up today. I'd want a cut up of all of Russell's pass plays of 30 or more yards from the field, and I want to see if there are some schemes that he felt very comfortable with, which makes a lot of sense. The very first thing any coach should do is to see what positions his quarterback is the most comfortable in and try to put that quarterback in as many of those positions as humanly possible. So trying to recycle schemes from the Nathaniel Hackett era might sound a little troubling to Denver Broncos fans, but it's only the schemes that Russell Wilson's truly comfortable in. At the end of the day, what do I think about this trade? Well, we gotta dissect it as truly what it is. If you remember in the trade deadline, the Denver Broncos swung a huge trade, trading a former top 5 pick in Bradley Chubb to the Miami Dolphins and receiving a late first-round pick in return. That late first-round pick was actually as a result of the Trey Lance trade a couple years prior. So essentially what is going down is the Denver Broncos traded Bradley Chubb for the main portion of compensation that they're giving up to get coach Sean Payton, which also they have to give up a 2024 second round pick, but they get a 2024 third round pick in return. So I don't think that's a huge deal. It makes a lot of sense why they would include that. I'm sure in the draft valuation chart, everything checks out there. But if we're to put assets aside and just dissect this for what it is, I think Sean Payton is the ideal coach for this type of situation. I mean, in this instance, you probably want to bring in an offensive-minded head coach because your defense seemed to be okay last year. I mean, this is a team that still has a very strong defense. It's the fact that Nathaniel Hackett wasn't able to get what he was supposed to get out of their offense that put them in the situation that they are currently in. So bringing in an offensive-minded head coach, especially one that has won a Super Bowl with an undersized QB in the past, makes a lot of sense for the Denver Broncos to do so here. Because at the end of the day, they clearly get a head coach that could take them where they want to go, And they could rest easy at night knowing that at the very minimum, Sean Payton has a lot of experience in this league and he knows what he's doing. The main reason why he retired was because he didn't want to be part of a rebuild. For the New Orleans Saints, I have to give them a lot of respect for conducting this trade. They're clearly rebuilding. They need as many assets as they possibly can at this point. I wouldn't even go as far as to say that they're rebuilding, rather they're retooling. They need to find a new quarterback. Their defense is already fairly solid. There's no purpose in keeping around Sean Payton at this point, so I think it makes a lot of sense for them to trade him. At the end of the day, I do think if there's one man that could save Russell Wilson, it would be Sean Payton. But I had a lot of expectations for the Denver Broncos this past offseason. Hopefully I don't look like an idiot for thinking that they're on the right path to relevance for this offseason. Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about all this. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.